Hey everyone, it's Tim from Arcana. We're going to continue our lab series, and I've made some changes to our topology. I think what we're going to do next with the series is we're going to try to make our lab look a bit more like how it kind of would in an actual production environment. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new DMVPN cloud. Now in our environment, both of these CSRs, our head ends, are going to be connected to our .2 subnet. I think in an actual production environment, these are more likely to be separate data centers, completely different sites or geographical locations. But for simplistic sakes, we're going to just keep these on the same network. So these are going to connect back. And the other thing that we're going to need to do is we need to move our MEVO server to a different subnet. Previously, our MEVO server was also on the same network as our hub routers. But for routing, since now we will have two potential paths via either of these tunnel networks back to our LAN network at 172.24 on the spoke, it's easier if we can just have the MEVO server point to a default gateway and then have that gateway do all of the routing for us so that MEVO knows which tunnel to take to get back to our spoke. I have already updated the IP address of the MEVO server, so we can just focus on adding that second hub. So let me go and log in. Okay, then we'll go to configuration headends. And we're going to add a new DMVPN cloud. And because we're adding another cloud, we need to provide a group suffix. The suffix is basically just a label so that we can differentiate between the two. If I just try to click save at this point, it's not going to let me, and that's because we already have this DMVPN cloud created, and that one doesn't have a suffix. So we need to have a way to differentiate between the two. Let's call this West. That's what we called it in our diagram. And let's go ahead and copy the values from our existing cloud since we're going to use mostly all the same IPv2 and IPsec settings. I can delete out my second entry. There's another CSR, and let me put in the IP address of our second hub. I think this is 199. And I need to supply the access credentials. Okay. So now what we'll do is let's go through our variables again and make sure these all look good. So the network address we want to use is 23.199.0. And we copied these values from our other tunnel, but we should change some of these just to help make it easier. So I'm going to make these 199.199. Supply my network ID, password, and all the rest looks like it can be the same. So I'm just updating some of these values. For example, the tunnel key needs to match on both sides. The tunnel number can be the same as on your other hub. It's locally significant. But just to help keep everything straight, it's probably better if we just use different values for things that are supposed to match on both sides. Especially because our spoke router is going to have two sets of tunnel interfaces configured on it. If they're using the same tunnel keys, and they won't actually be able to use the same tunnel number. So we need to make sure that these values that can't overlap are going to be changed. Because again, the spoke router is going to have all of these values configured on it. So we'll save this. Let's open up this one and add the tunnel IP address that's going on our actual tunnel interface of the hub. And I already have this router deployed, so I am not going to worry about sending a deployment to get this router configured. This has already been done. One thing I will need to do though is with our previous router, because I did change the MEVO IP address, I am going to need to update some values in the router. So this is our existing head-end device. So remember, this is our 2.230 with our tunnel 241. This is also our doubling as our STP router. So we need to update the host entry in this, because we can see we're still trying to point to the old MEVO server. So let's update some of these values. And then we can go ahead and do a write mem on this. And we can X out of this. Okay, some other things that we're going to need to do now that we've added the new cloud is we need to go to our classes page, find our class, and we need to say this class can provision to both clouds. So we're going to add West and hit save. And then we need to update our templates because our template's only actually pointing to one of our head ends right now. So let's go to our 8-port templates. Let's uncheck show active. That way we can see all the different templates in our system. And we want to use the dual cloud set of templates. So let's switch our DMVPN. You'll notice that switched the single cloud from active to not used. And we need to update our firewall to also use dual cloud. Then we can go ahead and click save here as well. Now there is one more thing that we need to do, but let me go ahead and show you the error message first, because I think that might make more sense. So if I were to go to the groups page and submit a deployment request for my router, I expect this to say deployment failed. And if we go to view and then the logging page, we can see the configuration failed to upload, and it says it's missing variable data, line 185, tunnel number east. So let's go ahead and let's jump over to our template. And we can see at line 128, was it? I can't remember. 185. We can see we're trying to create this tunnel interface with the variable tunnel number east. And MEVO is unable to fill the value for this variable. And the reason is because we don't have a DMVPN cloud with the label of east. 188 didn't fail because this one's using a suffix of west. And if we go back to our configuration headends page, you'll remember the suffixes we're using is west in all lowercase, and our other DMVPN cloud isn't using any suffixes. So for me to get my templates to work, what I need to do is I need to go into our dual cloud templates, and I need to remove all references to this East DMVPN cloud because our default cloud isn't using a suffix. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and pause the video. I'm going to edit all of these templates and take out this East suffix, and that should have us working. Now, the other thing you can do is if you are setting up a DMVPN cloud or a 2-cloud deployment from the start, so you haven't been following through with the whole lab series, when you create your first cloud, just give it the suffix of east and give your second one the suffix of west. And then that way you don't have to go through and edit any of the templates because our stock templates by default just use east and west. This one doesn't have a suffix, so I need to remove it from all of our templates. So I will fast forward and I will be right back. Okay, so I fixed up all the templates. So now let's go back to our groups page and let's restart our deployment request. Okay, this seems to be taking a suspicious amount of time. So let's check our logs and let's go to trace. It looks like we're trying to do something to the old IP address. So I must have forgotten to do something when updating the IP address. So let's go ahead and walk through that. Let me see if I can bring up my RDP session. Okay, so here's the RDP session to the MEVO server. So if I open up my network settings, okay, so I have this all set up properly. So that's to set the IP address, which we know is working because we were able to hit the web page. I think there might be a settings app I need to use whenever we change the MEVO server IP address. Let's try change settings. Aha, so we have to update this field, the ops XML IP address. So let's change this, hit update. Okay, so now we're back in the MEVO web page. So let's try restarting our request one more time. And there we go, we're in the ready state.